Born to Annoy, A Dawning of Awareness, Chapter 3, Daisy Nook, Gentle Jesus, and Hellfire Methodism. One Sunday morning Dad surprised me. We were having breakfast, sat in silence, concentrating on eating, which was our custom. "I think we should go for a walk. It's a lovely day." My spoonful of cornflakes came to a halt, halfway between bowl and mouth. Dad never went for a walk. He was always too tired, worn out after a week's hard labour. "Where to?" "You choose." "Daisy Nook." He laughed. "That's a long way, son." "Albert Worrell's walked there." "Albert Worrell's older than you. He's a big boy." "I can do it, Dad. I can run faster than Albert." Dad gave in. Daisy Nook it was. Luckily, he didn't ask me how I knew I could run faster than Albert. Daisy Nook was a place I'd never visited, but I'd heard the older boys talking about it, especially in the period leading up to Easter and immediately after, because at that time of year the annual fair took place. Eventually, with my hair combed and sleeked to perfection, we set out, me holding Dad's hand tight and feeling very proud to be with him. Everybody we passed as we walked down Hollyoak Street seemed to know him, and each and every one of them, men and women, young and old, smiled and wished us good morning. Once onto Moorside Street we passed the baker's shop, the purveyors of penny loaves, each a perfect replica of a large loaf of creamy brown bread that fitted snugly into the palm of my little hand. I've never seen such a thing since I ceased to live in Drawsden, and never tasted bread so good. Unfortunately, it was a Sunday, or I'd have dragged Dad across the road. Just before the end of Moorside Street, Lum Lane went off to the left. This would take us over Little Moss and to our destination. A small terrace of cottages lay on the right, the last two comprising the railway inn. Here the lane narrowed and climbed over a humpback bridge crossing the Manchester Victoria to Ashton-under-Lyne Railway, the nearest thing to a hill in the otherwise flat landscape. We climbed to the top on the narrow footpath, me hoping we'd reach the highest point seconds before a steam locomotive and its train of carriages or wagons passed underneath. My luck was out, but I still persuaded Dad to lift me up onto the bridge's parapet. The station lay below, the signal box in the distance as I looked back towards Drawsden town centre, along the gleaming rails into a dreary landscape of mills and towering chimneys, terraced houses and urban squalor. We continued walking towards the dark, smoke-blackened, gigantic edifice that was Lum Mill. Here the lane swung right and the view changed dramatically. As far as my eye could see, the ribbon of grey-black tarmac ran through flat open countryside, comprising a patchwork of green fields, punctuated by the odd tree, and bounded by ditches and hedgerows. The only buildings were one or two farmhouses, and small groups of tiny cottages either side the lane, which was bounded by black wooden fences alternating with hawthorn hedges, white with blossom. The dead, stifling Sunday silence of the town gave way to a murmuring, rustling chorus of life. Every hedgerow, tree and bush seemed alive with bird song. Lapwings swooped low over the fields and shot up into the sky, soaring and diving in pairs, crying out with their plaintive cry of "Pee-wee, pee-wee." Carrion crows and rooks stalked the fields, searching for food, and skylarks beat their wings high overhead, tiny black dots serenading all with their non-stop burbling song. The Lancashire sky was free of cloud for once, and the spring sun warmed us and everything around us. Dad tightened his grip on my hand momentarily. I looked up at him, and he was smiling, his eyes bright. After what seemed miles, although we'd only walked just over one since we commenced our tramp, we reached a T-junction. Daisy Nook lay to our left, and we were soon on our way, the lane descending steeply through thick woodland until it reached the valley bottom and the river Medlock. The lane now ran alongside the river's eastern bank until it crossed over to the other side by a bridge. The silence hitherto only broken by the song of birds, the soft current of the river, and the musical rustle of hedgerow leaves, played by the gentle breeze, gave way to the shrieks and laughter of children at play. Looking over the bridge, boys and girls were splashing about in the water, the older boys with long trousers rolled up to the knees, the girls with frocks tucked into their knickers. We explored the area until we reached the towpath of a canal. Here Dad found himself a spot under a tree, and I sat down on the edge of the waterway, my legs dangling over the water. On the opposite bank the field came right down to the water's edge, and rushes lined the canal. Once again everything seemed quiet, apart from a constant background hum of insects, and then a slight noise attracted my attention. A flash of red atop a yellow beak, a black head, neck and body, and I was looking straight at a water hen amidst the reeds. I began to concentrate on my immediate surroundings. A flash of metallic blue, a dragonfly hovering over the placid waters, and then zooming a few yards before hovering again. Then another and another. I watched entranced, not daring to move in case I broke the spell. Eventually I turned slowly, eager to tell Dad, but when I finally had my body and head turned around sufficient to catch his eye, it was to find him sprawled out on the grass, his head on his neatly folded jacket, fast asleep. Weeks passed, and gradually I explored further and further afield, occasionally with Dad, but more often on my own and sometimes with some of the older kids in the neighbourhood. Children of my own age seemed in short supply. I can remember one older boy who lived in the cul-de-sac across Hollyoake Street from us, taking me over the open fields to the east to show me a skylark's nest. I think it must have been in April 1951. Eventually we arrived at the sacred spot, and there it was, a swirl of dry grass in a tiny hollow within the longer green grass, and contained within it were 4 small speckled dark brown eggs. My delight at this wonderful sight was short-lived. My older companion picked up one of the eggs, as if to show me, and crushed it between his fingers. I couldn't believe my eyes. And then, to my horror, he compounded his crime by crushing the remainder under his boot. I rushed at him, fists flailing, absolutely outraged, but he flung me to the ground and laughed. "Tell anyone," he said, "and I'll say it was you." From that point on I gradually became a loner, keeping myself to myself apart from 1 or 2 kids I felt I could really trust. At the same time, every living, dumb, helpless creature became my friend. Later on in life this trait developed to an innate and spontaneous support for underdogs in general, not least those of the human variety. It must have been about this time Dad took it into his head that I should go to Sunday school. I was horrified. Having to go to school 5 days a week was bad enough. Nonetheless, he insisted it was for my own good. This announcement was made just after we'd finished Sunday dinner, and, before I'd time to put my rich imagination to work to find a way out of the dire situation I found myself faced with, there was a knock on the back door. "Come in, girls," Dad said. The door opened and 2 girls entered the kitchen. "This is Sandra and Linda," Dad announced. "They'll take you to Sunday school. Make sure you behave." Sandra was about 11, her sister 9. I wasn't yet 7, and didn't stand a chance. The Sunday school was at the back of the Methodist chapel on Moorside Street, near the school I attended. I didn't settle in. The teachers were by no means inspiring, the Bible readings boring, the hymns, bar one, in no way uplifting. The exception to the latter rule was All Things Bright and Beautiful. That was a song I really enjoyed singing, and often I'd find myself singing it out loud when I was wandering the countryside all on my own. It also almost caused an argument between Dad and myself. It wasn't long before I learned how to deal with my predicament and regain my lost Sunday afternoon freedom. Within 3 weeks, I convinced the girls I could make my own way there. Within 6, I started truanting. I start off from home, having kissed my dad goodbye, and walked to the end of Hollyoake Street, where I'd turn right instead of left, and then right again up Hoppit Lane. This latter lane ran parallel with Hollyoake Street, and at its end was a bridge over the railway and a track leading towards Ashton Moss. One Sunday afternoon, I arrived home in thoughtful mood, and not sure if my absence from the Sunday school had been reported. It hadn't, and when Dad asked me about my day, I told him quite truthfully I'd been singing All Things Bright and Beautiful. "Sing it for me, Malc." I sang it to him, and eventually he joined in. I'd never heard Dad sing before. He had a beautiful voice. Many years later I was to find out he'd been a choir boy as a youngster at St. James's Church in Gorton. It was over tea that night that I annoyed him, although that wasn't my intention. "Dad," I said, "if the Lord God made everything, all things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, does that mean he made germs?" "Germs? What have you got in your head now?" "Miss at school says we have to wash our hands before we eat and after we've been to the toilet, or else germs'll get us." "Miss is quite right, so you should. Germs are dangerous." "Well, who made 'em? If God made all things great and small, did he make all the things that are slimy and ugly? All the dirty little things that hurt and kill people?" "Malcolm, you mustn't think like that. It's blasphemy." Dad didn't look happy. I wondered what blasphemy meant, but something told me not to ask. Amazingly, nobody ever complained that I stopped attending Sunday school, or if they did, Dad never mentioned it to me. The magical attraction of the great outdoors proved to be a far more powerful influence on me than tales of gentle Jesus, or the fear of retribution promised by hellfire Methodism. However, this was not without its pitfalls. My mind, having realized I could get away without one form of schooling, began to question why I should bother with the other. This in turn was to lead me into all kinds of mischief and all kinds of trouble, but that lay in the future. Born to Annoy, A Dawning of Awareness, Chapter 4, Droylsden Street Life. Before I relate how I led myself astray, I feel I should throw some light on the urban life I, and many others of my generation of kids, grew up in. In those days motor cars were few and far between, and they were even rarer within the districts occupied by the working classes. For travel to work or to see friends and relatives, buses were regular and efficient. For shorter journeys, Shanks's pony sufficed. For longer journeys and holidays, we still had a vast network of railways. For most, the bicycle was still the king of the road, and more often than not the swiftest vehicle you were likely to meet. Come to think of it, it still is. The advantages of the motor car as a personal means of transport have proved to be illusory and self-defeating. As a means of travelling to work in any urban area of significance, we are back to the average speeds of a horse-drawn trap in the Victorian era, and it is people's reliance on private car use that is the cause. The humble bicycle remains the fastest vehicle for a 10-mile journey into any city centre by road, as well as remaining the most energy-efficient machine developed by humankind. But back to the 1950s. As a consequence of the lack of motor vehicles, even main roads were relatively safe, and side streets were playgrounds for youngsters of all ages. We did have regular traffic of a sort in Mossbank Avenue. Once a week the farmer on Hoppit Lane would travel round by horse and cart to collect the pig swill bins in which people left their vegetable peelings and unused foodstuffs. Arthur Gent, who lived on the corner of Hollyoake Street and Hawthorne Road, and had a market garden on Ashton Moss, had a regular vegetable round, again delivered by horse and cart. A local baker, at one point, delivered bread by van. If his visit came at a point when children were about, whether it be Saturdays or school holidays, he would be greeted with a song that no doubt annoyed. Don't eat Price's bread, it makes your shit like lead. No bloody wonder they fart like thunder, don't eat Price's bread. Another regular and welcome visitor, who travelled by horse and cart, was the rag and bone man. In exchange for old bits of scrap metal, rags, bottles, and other domestic detritus, he gave out donkey stones for house-proud residents, spinning tops, balloons in many colours, and sometimes bows and arrows for kids. The bows made of garden cane, and a single arrow made of the green stick normally used to support garden plants, were highly prized by some, not least me. Street games were many and varied: hopscotch on roads and pavements, cricket and football, French cricket and rounders, tag and hide and seek, skipping with ropes, singly or in groups of 3 and more, marbles, conkers, and a host of other games, all featured, dependent on the weather, the season of the year, and the temper and patience of adults. When I first arrived in Droylsden, Hawthorne Road, which was at the very top of Hollyoake Street, only had houses on its western side. The other side of the road had a fence beyond which open land led all the way to the Snipe Colliery between Orenshaw and Ashton-under-Lyne. However, this was changing, and houses were now being built on the eastern side and on open land to the south. This construction work naturally attracted our attention, building sites being yet one more form of adventure playground. Scaffolding became a form of climbing aid, partly finished chimneys, potholes to descend, planks across flooring joists, bridges across vast open spaces. And then there was Corky, the night watchman with a gammy leg. He was fair game if you wanted a chase, with no chance of being caught, and if you wanted to extend your vocabulary with a never-ending supply of heartfelt and frustrated curses. The Bug Hut, known to adults as the Palace on Ashton New Road in the town centre, provided our film entertainment on Saturday afternoons, in exchange for a thrumpty bit, and I still have happy memories of Flash Gordon and the Claymen, Laurel and Hardy, the Three Stooges, and black and white westerns by the score. I stopped having heroes when I found out Tom Mix wasn't a real cowboy. The films naturally provoked our fertile imaginations. Our coats, draped over the shoulders and fastened at the neck by the top button, became cloaks. We galloped home on imaginary horses, wielding invisible swords and shooting pistols comprised of a clenched hand with 2 rigid digits stuck out towards our imaginary foes. Bang, bang, you're dead.